Do you like my little setup with the pillows? Yeah, because it's going to fall as soon as I sit down. And it goes behind me, so it's pointless. I want a pop of color, and I'm trying to figure out what I can do in this space. I'm still not decided if I want to stay right here, if I want to move over. I just kind of like only one window being in the image. How about this? Does that work? Sure, that works. By the way, my dog is here right now, in case there is any little interruptions. Okay, so Chapter 11, Anne's Impression of Sunday School. We find Anne and Marilla in the Green Gables East Gable room. I don't know why they don't just call it Anne's room, but they call it the Gable room, with 3 dresses in front of them. Marilla asks Anne how she likes them, and we can already tell just from her facial expression, or rather the book tells us her facial expression is, that she does not like them. Quote, one was of a snuffy colored gingham, which Marilla had been tempted to buy from a peddler that preceding summer because it looked so serviceable. One was a black and white checkered sateen that she had picked up at a bargain counter that winter. And one was a stiff print of an ugly blue shade, which she had purchased that week at Carmody. That doesn't sound like very pretty fabric to me. She had made them herself, and they were all made alike. Plain skirts, fold tightly to plain waists, with sleeves as plain as waists and skirt as tight as sleeves could be. Yeah, it kind of makes her literally look stiff. Probably is the same pattern Marilla uses for herself or similar. Just sounds absolutely uncomfortable. I sensory nightmare. Ugh. And Anne responds as graceful as she can. I'll imagine that I like them, which is probably the best compliment that she could give in that moment. I don't want you to imagine it, says Marilla, offended. Oh, I can see you don't like the dresses. What is the matter with them? Aren't they neat and clean and new? I don't know if you can hear that in the audio. You're stomping your feet. Anne concedes that they are, and then when Marilla asks her what the issue is, she says they're simply not pretty. Marilla is offended by these remarks, saying she didn't trouble her head about getting a pretty dress for her. She only worried about functionality and having a prettier dress than the one she had before. She's absolutely shocked that Anne is not grateful after what she came with from the asylum. As you've probably already picked up on, Marilla does not believe in pampering vanity. To her, all that Anne needs is good, serviceable dresses. Dresses that function, that's it, look good, boom. The brown and the blue dress were for school, while the sateen was going to be her church wear dress. Anne was told she was to keep them neat, clean, and intact. Anne tells Marilla that she is very, very grateful. It's just they don't have puff sleeves. Anne would be so thrilled if she had puff sleeves because at the time they were the height of fashion. Everybody was wearing them. When Anne says that she would be thrilled, Marilla tells her, well, you'll have to go without your thrill, which is something that I noticed she ends up saying quite a bit to Anne, which is kind of funny. Well, you'll have to go without your thrill. I haven't any material to waste to put on sleeves. She insists that Anne would look ridiculous, while Anne said what's going to make her look ridiculous is the fact that she doesn't have puff sleeves, and everybody else at Sunday school and school will. Marilla, having none of this, instructs Anne to learn her Sunday school lesson for the next day that Mr. Bell had given her to read. When the two descend, Anne once again says that she really had wished for a white dress with puff sleeves. She even prayed that Marilla would make her one, and she chooses to imagine that one of them is, quote, snow white muslin. You know, I have to buy curtains for in here, and I literally was trying to look up muslin curtains because I've got so much of Anne in me. She chose to imagine one of them was, quote, snow white muslin with lovely lace thrills and 3 puffed sleeves. I'm imagining it's like puff, puff, puff versus just puff, you know, like boop, boop, boop. Just can sit there and seeing Anne stacked on stacks and stacks of puffs, just like, Rrr. When the morning comes, however, Marilla has a severe headache and tells Anne that she's going to have to go down and meet Mrs. Rachel Lynde to go to church with her. She tells her that Mrs. Rachel Lynde will get her to her class and that she will also show her where their pew is in the actual church after class is done. She reminds her to behave and tells her, here's a cent for the collection. Don't stare at people and don't fidget. I expect you to tell me the text when you come home. And with that, Anne heads off. We are given a little description of her right now in that dress. The dress is certainly not one that you would call skimpy, and in fact, clings to her at every curve and angle. Quote, her hat was a little flat, glossy. Her hat was a new, little, flat, glossy sailor. Her hat was a little, flat, glossy, new sailor. The extreme plain witch. Plain witch. Her hat was a little, flat, glossy, new sailor, the extreme plainness of which had likewise much disappointed Anne, who had permitted herself secret visions of ribbons and flowers. But lucky for Anne, on the maid road, very soon she comes across a whole bunch of wildflowers. She turns them into a beautiful wreath and puts it atop her head, not caring what anyone else thinks. I just realized, because I could see my camera over there, you can't see my hands when I'm talking with my hands. When Anne gets to Lynn's Hollow, however, she finds that Mrs. Rachel had already left. This doesn't bother Anne at all, and she still goes up to the church and finds a whole group of little girls on the porch. All of them were staring at her very curiously, especially at the adornment atop her head. The narrator lets us know that Avonlea little girls have already heard queer stories about Anne. Queer stories. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. The amount the word queer is used here is coincidence, timely, but also... Yes. We are also told Mrs. Lynde said she had an awful temper. Jerry Boot, the hired boy at Green Gables, said she talked all the time to herself or the trees and flowers like a crazy girl. No friendly advances are made by any of these little girls toward Anne, and so she goes into Sunday school. Her teacher, Mrs. Rogerson, who I don't think is mentioned again, so we're just going to call her the teacher. We're told that she must not like the look of Anne because every time she has a question, she asks Anne for the answer. She's absolutely picking on her. But luckily, Anne has memorized the information, and so she answers every single time correctly. We are told, though, it's unlikely she understood either question or answer, that she simply is really good at memorizing, as we'll see as she goes in school and stuff. And I don't like this teacher, so we're not going to even give her the description that we get. Anne is absolutely distraught as she looks around the room and sees that every other little girl but her has puff sleeves. And now, after Sunday school, Anne arrives home later without her wreath as it had wilted, so Marilla is spared from that information and that whole story for just a little while. She asks Anne how she liked Sunday school, and Anne says it was horrid. Marilla is horrified, and Anne simply goes over and kisses one of Bonnie's leaves while sitting in the rocking chair and waved to the flower. She wonders aloud if Bonnie missed her while she was gone. She then goes on to explain to Marilla that she was just as behaved as any of the other little girls. She tells her how Mrs. Lynde was not there, so she went to church all by herself. I went into the church with a lot of other little girls and sat in the corner of a pew by the window while opening exercises went on. Mr. Bell made an awfully long prayer. I would have been dreadfully tired before he got through it if I hadn't been sitting by that window. But it looked right out onto the lake of shining waters. So I just gazed at that and imagined all sorts of splendid things. Marilla tells her that she really should have been listening, and Anne retorts that he wasn't talking to her. He was talking to God and didn't even seem interested in it. She goes on again to remark how beautiful the view was, and Marilla thanks God that she didn't say anything about that view out loud to anyone there. Sorry if my voice is off. I feel very nasally and I have a sore throat. I just realized I did that entire thing with my headphones on, not even turned on, just on. When Anne goes into her class, she tells Marilla that there were 9 other little girls, all with puffed sleeves. And no matter how hard Anne tried to imagine that she was also wearing puff sleeves, it didn't work. Not like in her bedroom. Marilla is concerned that Anne did not pay attention. Anne tells her that she answered very many questions, although she didn't think it was fair that she wasn't allowed to ask questions right back. She absolutely knew her teacher was not a kindred spirit, and yeah, from the first moment, not a kindred spirit. She asked me if I knew... And then all the other little girls recited a paraphrase. She asked me if I knew any. I told her I didn't, but I could recite "The dog at its master's grave" if she liked. That's in the Third Royal Reader. Well, she explains it's not a religious text, it is sad and melancholy, and it might as well be. Instead, Anne was told to learn the 19th paraphrase for next Sunday. She had already memorized it. Of course, it's Anne, and she recited the 2 lines that really gave her a thrill. She recalls the rest of the time being shown to her pew for the readings. She said, again, it seemed like the minister didn't even want to be there, and he lacked imagination, any imagination. She admits that she absolutely just let her thoughts run. Quote, Marilla felt helplessly that all of this should be sternly reproved, but she was hampered by the undeniable fact that some of the things Anne said, especially about the minister's sermons and Mr. Bell's prayers, were what she herself had thought really deep, down had really thought about down in her heart for years, but had never given expression to it. It almost seemed to her that those secret, unuttered, critical thoughts had suddenly taken visible and accusing shape and form in the person of this outspoken morsel of neglected humanity. Not gonna lie, that last one I had to read a million times, and suddenly we are at the end of chapter 11. The chapter 15 and on are kind of longer chapters, so it just shocked me that I'm already done, and it's perfect timing because I have to go bring my cat to the vet. All right, so funny story, guys. I just recorded chapter 13 thinking it was chapter 12. So there's gonna be I already gave the disclaimer. My dog was sitting over here. I'm just not resetting it up, but she was a little too loud while filming, so I'm not where I usually am centered, and I'm not fixing it. It's been some time since I recorded. So here I am switching a little bit up, going from chapter 13 to chapter 12. Okay, but anyways, here we go. Chapter 12. A solemn vow and promise. So luckily Marilla was spared the knowledge about the whole flower crown and everything until the next Friday. When she came home from Mrs. Lynde's house, she called Anne over to discuss the matter with her. "Oh, I know pink and yellow aren't becoming to me," begins Anne. "Becoming fiddlesticks. It was putting flowers on your hat at all, no matter what colors they were. That was ridiculous. You are the most aggravating child." I just realized I was clicking this the whole time. Sorry. As we already know, Marilla is not a fan of vanity, and this is just the first time anyone's seeing Anne, and it's vanity on full display. I mean, showing up vain to church? Oh my gosh. I don't see why it's any more ridiculous to wear flowers on your hat than your dress, protests Anne. Lots of little girls have bouquets pinned on their dresses. What's the difference? I agree. What is the what is the difference? Genuinely. Of course, Marilla doesn't tell her what the difference is, but just doesn't let her protests sway her mind. "Don't answer me back like that, Anne. It was very silly of you to do such a thing. Never let me catch you at this trick again. Mrs. Rachel said she thought she would sink to the floor when she saw you come in all rigged out like that." She says that Rachel tried to stop Anne, but she could not get to her in time, and people were, in fact, discouragingly talking about it. Marilla is sure that it's some sort of a slight towards their house. At this point, Anne has tears in her eyes, and she's just apologizing, explaining the flowers were so alluring. She thought they would look so lovely on her hat. She thought because the other girls had fake flowers that it would be okay. She suggests that Marilla just sends her back to the asylum and is done with her. She would not make it, but she sees it as better than being a vex on Marilla. Here's a little moment of growth from Marilla herself, as she is vexed to herself for bringing Anne to tears, not at Anne anymore. From uncomfortable to then understanding, Marilla definitely does have a deep empathetic heart, even if she tries to hide it. She ensures the girl that she has no intention of ever sending her back to that place. She just wants her to behave like other little girls and tells her to not cry anymore. She does give Anne a little bit of good news that Diana is now home. Marilla says she needs to borrow a skirt pattern from Mrs. Barry anyways, and asks if Anne wants to go pop on over to say hello and meet her. I just got off of a cushion I didn't realize I was sitting on, so I'm a little lower now. Do you really think there's a shot that her response is anything but jumping up all excited? Because of course that's what happens. Her words do sort of surprise me though. Not shock me, but surprise me. "Oh, Marilla, I'm frightened. Now that it has come, I'm actually frightened. What if she shouldn't like me? It would be the most tragical disappointment of my life." No, I did expect Anne to kind of be all excited, ready to face the experience. But this is a much more heart-connecting, realistic response to this type of thing that made me go, ooh, me girl, me too. Marilla tells her to stop getting herself all back into a fluster and to stop using big words, and says that she should worry more about Mrs. Barry's opinions than Diana's. At the end of her scolding, she exclaims, "For pity's sake, if the child isn't actually trembling." Marilla, you just got her calm, and now you're going to scare her even more. Literally a quote, Anne was trembling. Her face was pale and tense. Anne exclaims that Marilla would be the exact same way as she hastened over and got her hat. The two head on over to Orchard Slope by a shortcut, and when they arrive, Mrs. Barry meets them right at the door. She is described as a tall, black-eyed and haired woman with a very resolute mouth. She had the reputation of being very strict with her children. She cordially invites them in and Marilla introduces Anne, who makes sure to add on with an E. Even though she's nervous, she wants that to always be clear. Mrs. Barry didn't respond, whether from confusion or not, but asks kindly how Anne is. I am well in body, although considerably rumbled up in spirit. Thank you, ma'am, Anne says gravely. Then aside to Marilla in an audible whisper. She goes, there wasn't anything startling in that, was there, Marilla? This didn't seem to cause any kind of a stir, however, because our attention is brought over to Diana on the sofa. She was a very pretty girl, with her mother's black eyes and hair, and rosy cheeks, and the merry expression, which was her inheritance from her father. Mrs. Barry introduces the two girls and tells Diana to go take Anne down so she can show her flowers. She also makes sure to insert that she thinks Diana reads way too much, as she was reading when they first came in. The garden they go to is the type of beauty that Anne would normally be delighted by if it was any other circumstance, but instead, both girls just kind of stand there staring at each other shyly. Finally, Diana breaks the silence saying, I thought I had missed the quote, but I just wrote it down wrong, so I found it in the chapter, so I do have it from the chapter in this part. So I actually got it from the book, so we're going to read it from the book. Oh, Diana, Anne says at last, clasping her hands in an almost whisper. Do you think you can like me a little? Enough to be my friend? Enough to be my bosom friend? Diana laughed. Diana always laughed before she spoke. Why, I guess so, she says frankly. I'm awfully glad you've come to live at Green Gables. It would be jolly to have somebody to play with. There isn't any other little girl who lives near enough, and I've no sisters big enough. Will you swear to be my friend forever and ever? Demands Anne. Diana looks shocked. Why, it is so dreadfully wicked to swear, she says rebukingly. Oh, no, not my kind of swearing. There are two kinds, you know. I've never heard of one kind, said Diana doubtfully. There really is another. Oh, it isn't wicked at all. It just means vowing and promising. Solemnly. Well, I don't mind doing that, agreed Diana, relieved. How do you do it? We must join hands so, said Anne gravely. It ought to be over running water. We'll just imagine this path is running water. I'll repeat the oath first. I solemnly swear to be faithful to my bosom friend Diana Barry, as long as the moon and the sun shall endure. Now you say it and put my name in it. Diana repeats the oath with a little bit of a laugh, and then says as an afterthought, You're a queer girl, Anne. I heard before that you were queer, but I believe I'm gonna like you real well. Queer. There's that word again. That word that means so many things, but also means other things. I love how quickly Diana and Anne take to each other here. It's that real soul bestie bond. You can almost feel Anne's fear as she's coming over, like, if Mrs. Barry is such a way, what is Diana like? How is she gonna ever get along? And then she's probably super scared, breaks the silence. I love it. I love the two of them, how quickly they bond. Diana accompanies them on the way home all the way to the bridge. They walk arm in arm and promise to spend the next day together. Marilla asks Anne if she found her kindred spirit, and she confirms that she has. In fact, it's another one of those parts of the book that I have to share. Oh, yes, sighs Anne, blissfully unconscious of any sarcasm on Marilla's part. Oh, Marilla, I am the happiest girl on Prince Edward Island at this very moment. Oh, Marilla, I am the happiest girl on Prince Edward Island at this very moment. I assure you I'll say my prayers with a right good will tonight. Diana and I are going to build a playhouse in Mr. William Bell's Birch Grove tomorrow. Can I have those pieces of broken china that are outside of the woodshed? Diana's birthday is in February and mine is in March. Don't you think it's a very strange coincidence? I have a friend that I call my soul bestie who was born in April and I'm in March. So I'm just saying, that's another little weird thing because I see a lot of similarities in the bond. But anyways, it is a coincidence. It very much is a coincidence, and such a coincidence. So going back to the text, Diana's birthday is in February and mine is March. Don't you think that's a very strange coincidence? Diana's gonna lend me a book to read. She says it's perfectly splendid and tremendously exciting. She's going to show me a place back in the woods where rice lilies grow. Don't you think Diana has soulful eyes? I wish I had soulful eyes. Diana is going to teach me to sing a song called Nellie in the Hazel Dell. She's going to give me a picture to put up in my room. It's a perfectly beautiful picture, she says. A lovely lady in a pale blue silk dress. A sewing machine agent gave it to her. I wish I had something to give to Diana. I am an inch taller than Diana, but she is ever so much fatter. She says she'd like to be thin because it's much more graceful, but I'm afraid she only said that to soothe my feelings. We're going to the shore someday to gather shells. We have agreed to call the spring down by the lodge bridge the Dryad's Bubble. Isn't that a perfectly elegant name? I read a story once about a spring called that. A dryad is a sort of a grown-up fairy, I think. I'm really so happy for Anne in this moment. She's finally found her bosom friend, her kindred spirit. Marilla hopes that Anne won't talk Diana to death and reminds her that she will not be spending all of her time playing. She must balance her work and her play accordingly. So Matthew has just arrived home. So as the book says, Anne's cup of happiness was full and Matthew caused it to overflow when he arrived from Carmody and much to Marilla's dismay, brought Anne some sweets. Chocolates, in fact. Marilla says it'll ruin her teeth and stomach. This is a feeling I absolutely hate. At the time I was writing this, in general in life, no matter how I heal, I am uncomfortable with the uncomfortable. For Anne, this feels like everything is aligned, everything is great. Also know the fact that a lot of times these moments can then just shatter and you realize nothing was like you thought it was. She looks over and she sees Anne's panic face and ensures her that she can eat some. He just should have given her peppermints, as they were a more wholesome choice, and to just not eat them all in one go. Anne asks Marilla what I would actually honestly ask myself, if she can share the other half with Diana, as the first half will taste double as sweet if she knows that she's able to share. And before we close out the chapter, I just have to share this last paragraph. I will say this for the child, says Marilla when Anne had gone to her gable. She isn't stingy, I'm glad, for all the faults I detest in a stinginess. Ugh! She isn't stingy, I'm glad, for all of the faults I detest stinginess in a child. I have read that 10 times. Dear me, it's only 3 weeks since she came, and it seems as if... Dear me, it's only 3 weeks since she came, and it seems as if she's been here always. I can't imagine the place without her. Now, don't be looking I told you so, Matthew. That is bad enough in a woman, but it is not to be endured in a man. I'm perfectly willing to own up that I'm glad I consented to keeping the child, and that I'm getting fond of her. Don't you rub it in, Matthew Cuthbert. I don't think the other times I've read this, I ever really paid attention to how fast Marilla warms up. I pay attention to how fast Anne is happy, how fast everything seems to light up, but never really gave Marilla the chance that I really should have. I feel like Marilla, now that I'm looking at it better, does understand a lot about Anne, but instead of like Matthew, who loves the kindredness, is uncomfortable by the ways that she understands Anne and kind of really tries to push past herself. Okay, so now we are on to chapter 13. People person in a room of people, a people person in a room of people, I'm a kid. I'm going to see AJR. I put my what's it called? Some good luck. Hello! Welcome back. For you, it's been a few seconds. For me, it's been a couple weeks. Yeah, a lot of stuff happened in my personal life, but I am back, and I just wanted to share that while I was gone, I did actually get my books in, so I'm so excited. This one I'll still be using the iPad. I really want to be able to sit here and read to you from the actual book, but I honestly did not do that. My dog is here right now, so I'm really kind of trying to just give her her space and let her look out the window, so I'm not as over as I would usually be, but that's okay. We'll manage. I don't think you guys actually care. All right, so back into it for me. Chapter 13, The Delights of Anticipation. So at the time that I was actually writing these chapters, I had big conversations coming for me, and for the sake of time and what people actually care about, I'm not going to go as emotional as I was going to, but just know that all the script from like this video, every single script writing it was a little too fitting to the time right before I filmed the last video. And yeah, we won't go over that, but you know me, I've already given you some of my emotional. I try to keep me out of it, but I kind of feel like no matter what I do, it's going to keep working itself into there, because the whole reason I'm doing this is so me-centered. We are cleverly told that time has passed, and it is now August. We find Marilla looking at the clock, anticipating for Anne to come in for her sewing lesson. She gave Anne a set time to return from Diana's, where she not only stayed an extra half hour, and Marilla, when she looks out, sees, and we're gonna have to quote this one, and now she's perched out there on the woodpile talking to Matthew. 19 to the dozen, when she knows perfectly well she ought to be at her work. I've never saw such an infatuated man. The more she talks and the odder the things she says, the more he's delighted, evidently. Anne Shirley, you come right here this minute, do you hear me? So I find this really funny this time around reading it and writing the script, because Pretty much it's been more and more of Marilla saying, Matthew, stay out of it. Matthew saying he'll stay out of it, but Matthew, in fact, not staying out of it. Marilla taps a series of staccato little taps onto the window to let Anne know that it's time to come inside. Anne flies in, flushed with her unbraided hair just flying along behind her, her eyes shining. Anne excitedly tells Marilla all about the Sunday school picnic that's coming up, and veterans of the series, if you know, you know this story. If you've watched the show, I think it's probably in anything, Anne. Speaking of which, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about watching the TV show. I'm not sure if I'm gonna watch it in between. I was gonna wait to start the TV show till after, but I kind of feel like I want to, so that I can more reference it and then later on make the video for it, but like watch it, make my notes, make my everything now, and then whatever I do with it later to kind of figure out which stuff came from which books, because, you know, it's kind of mixes in books in there. And no matter what I do, this chapter is kind of personal for me. The anticipation of something excited happening, and then just the disappointment and the fear of anticipation. Anne is beyond excited at the anticipation of the ice cream that's going to be at the party. She cannot wait to taste it, and Marilla reminds her to look at the clock and tell Marilla what time it says. What time she was supposed to be home, and Anne completely misses her point. 2:00. But isn't it splendid about the picnic, Marilla? Please, can I go? Oh, I've never been to a picnic. I've dreamed of picnics, but I've never... And Marilla cuts her right off with, yes, I told you to come home at 2:00, and it's 2:45. I'd like to know why you didn't obey me, Anne. Why, I meant to, Marilla, as much as could be, but you have no idea how fascinating Idlewood is. And then, of course, I had to tell Matthew about the picnic. Matthew is such a sympathetic listener. Please, can I go? Marilla, of course, has no idea what Idlewood means, and says that Anne must resist the fascination of whatever it's called. When she says to be home, she means it. Not stop and talk to Matthew, home. And of course she can go to the Sunday school picnic. Marilla couldn't refuse when everyone else was going. Anne alerts Marilla that she is supposed to bring something to eat, and no matter what, when she's tried, Anne cannot cook. She doesn't mind that she has to go without puff sleeves, as she has still not gotten her way on that, but no offering of food would be total humiliation. I love how you guys can't see how much I talk with my hands. Like, they kind of sometimes flip up here, but they're like down here just moving this whole time. It has actually been preying on her mind since she learned about bringing food. Marilla says not to let it prey any longer because she will absolutely bake her a basket. Oh, you dear good Marilla. Oh, you are so kind to me. Oh, I am so much obliged to you. Getting through with her ohs, Anne casts herself into Marilla's arms and rapturiously kisses her sallow cheeks. It was the first time in her whole life that childish lips had voluntarily touched Marilla's face. Again, that sudden sensation of startling sweetness thrilled her. She was secretly vastly pleased at Anne's impulse caresses, which she probably was the reason she said so brusquely, there, never mind your kissing nonsense. I'd sooner see you doing strictly as you are told. As for cooking, I mean to begin giving you lessons in that some sort of these days. But you're so feather-brained, Anne. I've been waiting to see if you would sober down a little and learn to be steady before I begin. You gotta keep your wits about you in cooking and not stop in the middle of things and let your thoughts rove all over creation. Now get to your patchwork and have a square done before tea time. While grabbing her basket, Anne says that she is not a fan of patchwork. One of those moments that if you've read the series makes me kind of giggle, thinking forward to her youngest child, her youngest daughter. So Anne doing her patchwork kind of makes me laugh, and it reminds me of the future with her youngest child who actually loves doing her sewing work and patchwork. Anne states once again that she'd rather be Anne of Green Gables and sewing patch than Anne of anywhere else and not sewing patchwork. She goes on in a way that honestly sharing right here would be way too much about playing with Diana and the elegant times that they have. She says that while she has to come up with most of the imagination, Diana is perfect in every other way, which I kind of get the feeling that it's like Diana is almost like a neurotypical versus neurodivergent friendship is really where I get, especially now looking at it and the way that Diana talks. But she loves Anne and Anne loves her, and it doesn't matter. They are perfect matches for each other. She explains that Idlewood is the playhouse that they created together. It took her a little while to get to the name, but Diana was absolutely enraptured by it. You must come and see it, Marilla, won't you? We have great big stones, all covered with moss for seats, and boards from tree to tree for shelves. And we have all of our dishes on them. Of course, they're all broken, but it's the easiest thing in the world to just imagine that they're all whole. We get the entire full description of the place, and we find out that Matthew is going to make them a little table. I really think the point of this part is just to show how Anne can ramble and ramble and ramble. And again, read the books because I love her ramblings. They're so sweet. It's just too much for me to read here. Oh my gosh, I barely get through what I already do. Marilla finally says, "Anne, you have talked even on for 10 minutes by the clock. Now, just for curiosity's sake, let's see if you can hold your tongue for the same length of time." Anne does in fact hold her tongue as asked, and over the next week talks over and over and over all about the picnic, dreaming about it, seeing it in her head, living it in her head, thinking about the real picnic that's gonna happen. She explained to Marilla the absolute thrill she had in her heart when she heard that the minister was actually talking about it, cementing that it's actually going to happen inside of her mind. This is definitely one of those moments where I was like, get out of my head, because I have learned to not really like anticipation at all. And you find those little moments where you're like, yes, this means it'll definitely happen. And it's better to not count your eggs. Better to wait and see and talk about things in the past, in my opinion, on some stuff. But you know, learning about dealing with anticipation is something that I've had to really, really center myself on. Marilla warns Anne that she sets her heart on things too much and that she's headed for a lot of disappointments in life. Basically what I was just saying. Marilla, like I do, probably to an even larger degree, understands the sad insights that time gives you about it being excited for something to happen. Naively, Anne explains to Marilla that the anticipation is the fun of the whole matter, and that nothing can stop you from imagining future things, even if they don't actually happen. Nope. No. See, this might sound as a little too heavy on the other side, but anticipation without understanding that if it doesn't happen, it's not going to happen, can only lead to disappointment. A little triggered even when I'm trying to not be triggered, because such a warning, such a horrible lesson to have to learn. Anne goes on to tell us, "Blessed are they who expect nothing, for they shall not be disappointed." But I think it would be worse to expect nothing than to be disappointed. Next part. Again, just reading it. Marilla wore her amethyst brooch to church that day as usual. Marilla always wore her amethyst brooch to church. She would have thought it rather sacrilegious to leave it off. As bad as forgetting her Bible or her collection dime. The amethyst brooch was Marilla's most treasured possession. A seafaring uncle had given it to her mother, who in turn bequeathed it. It was an old-fashioned oval containing a braid of her mother's hair, surrounded by a border of very fine amethysts. Marilla knew too little about precious stones to realize how fine the amethysts actually were, but she thought them very, very beautiful, and was always pleasantly conscious of their violet shimmer at her throat. Above her good brown satin dress, even though she could not see it, Anne had been smitten with delight and admiration when she first saw that brooch. "Oh, Marilla, it is a perfectly elegant brooch. I don't know how you can pay attention to the sermon or the prayers when you have it on." "I couldn't. I know. I think amethysts are just sweet. They are what I used to think diamonds were like long ago before I had ever seen a diamond. I read about them and tried to imagine what they would be like. I thought they would be lovely, glimmering purple stones. When I saw a real diamond in a lady's ring one day, I was actually disappointed. I was so disappointed I cried. Of course, it was very lovely, but it wasn't my idea of a diamond. Will you let me hold the brooch for 1 minute, Marilla? Do you think amethysts can be the souls of violets?" This brings us to the end of chapter 11, and I know you're probably ready to get to chapter 12 to see what happens with this picnic, and why this brooch is so important to this moment right now. All right, here we go. All right, so I had my therapy. I cried, I redid my makeup, made sure my dog was okay, moved over a little bit so we're closer to our normal setup, and let's go into chapter 14. So chapter 14, Anne's confession. So this is going to be a little of a triggering chapter. Just a heads up. So now, while I was writing this, I'm not gonna lie, I was in the middle of my own little spiral where everything kind of fit a little too well. So I'm gonna try to reserve a lot of what I was gonna say because I had a lot of like personal, emotional stuff happening for me. The rest of this video, honestly, recording, when I was writing the scripts. So I'm going to try to minimize that a bunch. Please let me know below if you want me to do less about me, more about me. I feel like I do too much, so let me know. The Monday before the picnic, Marilla asks Anne if she has seen her brooch. She thought she had put it on her little pincushion after church, but it's not there. Anne admits she has. When Marilla was at the Aid Society, she admits that she had walked past the room and had seen it. She admitted that she did touch it and hold it just to kind of see how it looked. And this really, of course, upsets Marilla. Quote, "You had no business to do anything of the sort. It is very wrong of a little girl to meddle. You shouldn't have gone into my room in the first place, and you shouldn't have touched a brooch that didn't belong to you in the second. Where did you put it?" Then Anne responds, "Oh, I put it back on the bureau. I hadn't it on a minute. Truly, I didn't mean to meddle, Marilla. I didn't think twice about it being wrong to go in and try on the brooch. But I see now that it was, and I'll never do it again. That's one good thing about me. I'll never do the same naughty thing twice." I get the sentiment, man. That is the part that really, bothered me when I was writing it. How many times do I have to say, sign over my head, how many of you, I resonate with the whole, I don't do anything wrong twice. I don't realize I did wrong the first time and still having to deal with the consequences of your own actions. And tells Marilla that she doesn't exactly remember where she put the brooch, but that she definitely did not take it. Marilla goes to do a more thorough search, and when she sees that still it's not there, she says, "Anne, the brooch is gone. By your own admission, you were the last person to handle it. Now, what have you done with it? Tell me the truth at once. Did you take it out and lose it?" To which Anne responds, "No, I didn't," said Anne solemnly, meeting Marilla's angry gaze squarely. "I never took the brooch out of your room, and that is the truth. If I was to be led to the block for it, although I'm not very certain what the block is, so there, Marilla." Anne's "so there" was only intended to, emphasize her point, but for Marilla, it's an act of defiance, the way that she would use it or Matthew would use it. "So there," versus she's like, so for Anne, it's that's the point. I didn't. I wouldn't. I don't know what happened to it, but it wasn't me. "I believe you are telling me a falsehood, Anne," she says sharply. "I know you are. There now, don't say anything more unless you are prepared to tell the whole truth. Go to your room and stay there until you are ready to confess." And I really do understand why Marilla feels the way that she does. She doesn't know Anne that well yet. I mean, it's only been, 4 weeks now, maybe a month? And it's just so hard to watch, knowing the faith that she will have in her and knowing what actually happens, that she is blaming Anne like this. Marilla sends Anne up without the peas that she was having a lot of fun shelling, so with no food. And she tells herself that she knows that the girl didn't mean to take it out and lose it. She didn't steal it or anything. Probably that she took it out to play, and she starts to spiral in her thoughts, and then the only possible explanation that she has is Anne must have taken it. Anne must have taken it, and she's lying to me. No matter what she thinks, that is the thought spiral that she is going down. She looks again and again, and in the morning, she brings it to Matthew fully convinced that it was Anne. Yeah, I get it. It just, again, like I said, hurts to watch Anne have to go through this, and Marilla to go through this. And of course, to mind right now is the whole burning down the house fear that Marilla has, because she is an orphan, you never know. She knows Anne, and this doesn't fit Anne, so of course now it's more distrusting thoughts versus just trusting the girl. And I get it, again, I get it. If I had this little girl I didn't know, and just like Marilla, she doesn't think she took it on purpose, but that she's lying to her, that's hard. Matthew asked if she looked everywhere, if she looked behind the dresser, and Marilla says, "I've moved the bureau, and I've taken out the drawers, and I've looked in every crack and cranny," was Marilla's positive answer. "The brooch is gone, and that child has taken it and lied about it. That's the plain, ugly truth, Matthew Cuthbert, and we might as well look it in the face." I just realized that I said it hasn't been that long, and I'm realizing I recorded those out of order. So yes, this is actually in August, so she has known her for quite a while now. Still, that must make it even more confusing to Marilla. Sorry, going back to it. Matthew is so relieved that it's not him that's going to have to do something about this and asks Marilla what her. Marilla says she will stay in her room until she confesses and must be punished. Matthew reminds Marilla of their agreement, and Marilla felt deserted by everyone. She could not even go to Mrs. Lynde for advice. She went up to the east gable with a very serious face and left it with a more serious face still. Anne steadfastly refused to confess. She persisted in asserting that she had not taken the brooch. The child had evidently been crying, and Marilla had felt a pang of pity which she sternly repressed. By night she was, as she expressed it, beat out. You'll stay in this room until you confess, Anne. You can make up your mind to that, she says firmly. But the picnic is tomorrow, Marilla, cried Anne. You won't keep me from that, will you? You'll just let me out for the afternoon, won't you? Then I'll stay here as long as you'd like afterwards, cheerfully. But I must go to the picnic. You're not going to the picnic nor anywhere else until you've confessed, Anne. Oh, Marilla, gasps Anne. But Marilla had gone out and shut the door. This is what I mean. Never get yourself too excited for something happening. Always allow the room for doubt, because again, this is what is maddening for me and why I try not to look forward to things, because yeah, it can be taken away for the most random things, even if you do nothing. Like Anne, yeah, she touched stuff she shouldn't have touched, but that was her crime. It's sad because it is hard for Marilla to not kind of hold these things against Anne. Of course, for poor Anne, we jump to Wednesday, the day of the picnic, and it is in fact a beautiful day. The birds sang and she could smell the flowers, and the world looked as if it was ready for Anne's greeting. But she was not at her window this day to wave. When Marilla goes to bring breakfast upstairs, Anne says that she is ready to confess. Marilla insists that Anne tell her what she has to say. Very bitter. Of course, because, oh my gosh, she was lying. So here goes Anne's confession. I took the amethyst brooch, said Anne, as if she was repeating a lesson she had learned. I took it just as you said. I didn't mean to take it when I went in, but it did look so beautiful, Marilla, when I pinned it on my breast that was overcome by irresistible temptation. I imagined how perfectly thrilling it would be to take it to Idlewood and play I was Lady Cordelia Fitzgerald. It would have been so much easier to imagine I was Lady Cordelia if I had a real amethyst brooch on. Diana and I made necklaces of roseberries, but what are roseberries compared to amethysts? So I took the brooch. I thought I could put it back before you came home. I went all the way around by the road to lengthen out the time. When I was going across the bridge of the Lake of Shining Waters, I took the brooch off to have another look. Oh, how did it shine in the sunlight. And then when I was leaning over the bridge, just slipped through my fingers, so, and went down, 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 all purpley sparkling, and sank forevermore beneath the Lake of Shining Waters. And that's the best I can do at confessing, Marilla. Marilla feels a hot white anger surging up inside of her, and yeah, after that confession, again, it's one of those situations I can't really blame Marilla. I don't know how I would respond. I wouldn't respond negatively. I don't know how I would respond. I mean, this child took her most prized possession in the world, this amethyst brooch, and lost it forever in the water. So what? She could play with it? And she didn't ask? She just lost it on Marilla? And Anne just sat there and calmly recited what happened. I might even put too much emotion into it. It's just hard for me to read stuff and keep it going without putting the emotion into it, but she just recited it as if she was talking about something in history class. Anne, this is terrible, she said, trying to speak calmly. You are the very wickedest girl I have ever heard of. I'm a little dissociated from my ability to do the voices right. Apologies. Anne agrees and says she absolutely must be punished for what she has done after the picnic. And I don't know what Marilla was expecting. What kind of a confession would have led her to allowing Anne to go to the picnic? Probably if she had it, like, in her room and was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I had it with me. Marilla kind of wanted less of an exaggerated tale, but, you know, by now she should kind of know Anne and the way that she speaks. Her anger is just clouding her. Anne absolutely explodes when she finds out she's not going to the picnic after all and told Marilla that was the only reason that she confessed. And yes, again, if you don't give Anne the benefit of the doubt, this seems extremely wicked. Oh my goodness, so you wouldn't have told me? Unless you got that event. And instead of questioning Anne in this moment and giving her the benefit of the doubt, instead of finding out what Anne exactly meant, Marilla simply says, ice cream or not, Anne is not going, and that is final. Marilla goes downstairs very quickly thinking about how no child would behave like this if they were not truly, absolutely bad. She feels so foolish because Rachel was right about the way she talked about Anne from the start. She sets herself to do a whole bunch of tasks that absolutely do not need doing, such as raking the yard in August. She's trying to distract any kind of thoughts about all of it. She calls Anne to dinner, which of course, again, is midday, and a tear-stained face appears to declare she doesn't want any dinner. Anne states she absolutely could not eat anything with a broken heart. You'd feel remorse of consciousness someday, I expect, for breaking it, Marilla, but I forgive you. Remember, when that time comes, that I forgive you. But please don't ask me to eat anything, especially boiled pork and greens. Ooh. Boiled pork and greens are so unromantic when one is in affliction. Anne telling Marilla that she will feel remorse feels like something that would cause an explosion out of Marilla. Absolutely, I would expect it. But instead, she lets Anne off and tells her to go back to her room and starts to talk to Matthew about the whole ordeal. Matthew is absolutely struggling between his sense of judgment and what's right and what's wrong, and his love for Anne. It doesn't seem like Anne. This behavior is not Anne-like at all. Supper was not any better. Marilla even snapped at Jerry because he was like cheerfully whistling and whatever while he worked. As the text says, when her dishes were washed and her bread sponge, when her dishes were washed and her bread sponge set aside and her hens fed, Marilla remembered that she had noticed a small run in the best Black Lake shawl. The fuck am I saying? When her dishes were washed and her bread sponge set aside and her hens fed, Marilla remembered that she had noticed a small run in her best black lace shawl when she had taken it off on Monday afternoon returning from the Ladies' Aid. She decided that she would go and mend it right now. The shawl was in a box in her trunk. As Marilla lifted it out, the sunlight, falling through the vines that clustered thickly around the windows, struck upon something caught in the shawl. Something that glittered and sparkled in violet facets of light. Marilla snatched at it with a gasp. It was the amethyst brooch hanging to a thread of the lace by its catch. Yeah. The whole time. Marilla had put it on her shawl that morning before she then comes home and asks Anne, where is my brooch? Yep, it was Marilla the whole time. Marilla knows that she has to apologize, and Marilla goes up to the gable and asks what on earth Anne was all about apologizing when she didn't even lose it. Why did she make up a story? Anne responds that Marilla told her that she was gonna sit there until she confessed, so she made one up. That black and white thinking that always got me in trouble, and Anne right there, saying, there, it's done. I've got a confession. That's great for me. In spite of herself, Marilla laughs at the situation and responds, Anne, you do beat all, but I was wrong. I see that now. I shouldn't have doubted your word when I'd never known you to tell a story. Yeah, Marilla. Yeah, of course it wasn't right for you to confess to a thing you hadn't done. It was very wrong to do so, but I drove you to it. So if you'll forgive me, Anne, I'll forgive you, and we shall start square again. And now get yourself ready for the picnic. Anne is shocked, probably as much as you are, because I thought the picnic must be over and done with by now. But Anne is shocked that there's still time, and she'll still get to try the ice cream. The most important thing has not gone by yet, which is ice cream. After the picnic, Anne comes home and recalls all of the events, saying she had a perfectly scrumptious time, and that was a word she had learned that day. She even says words fail to describe that ice cream, and assures Marilla that it is divine. I can't say words. That night when Matthew was being told the story by Marilla, she admits to her mistake and admits that she can't help but laughing to herself when she thinks about that absolute tall tale of a confession. The child is hard to understand in some respects, but I believe she'll turn out all right, and there's one thing certain, no house will ever be dull that she's in. I'm really glad that in the end, Marilla learned the lesson, got to know Anne a little bit better, and that Anne still got to go to the picnic, and that the time lost wasn't really focused on. And with that, we are on to chapter 15. Don't mind me here with my blanket. I'm a little chilly, but the loud noises stopped outside, so I'm okay. Please don't mind my blanket here. Also, if you ever see me looking down in the corner, it's because I can see the picture of the video in the corner, and I'm just realizing that I keep looking over there, so I got rid of that. But don't mind me. I'm a little chilly. The noises stopped outside, and I figured I would continue working on this now as I'm sitting here. Believe it or not, this is the same shade as the original one, but I lost that original lip gloss, juicy, soft gloss stick thing. Ooh, turkey vulture just went through. That dude was big. I was like, what is that noise out there? Okay, so let's try to focus in, not think about the turkey vulture, onto chapter 15, A Tempest in the School Teapot. Chapter 15 starts on a school day for Anne, and again, this is one of those moments where we absolutely zoom in on just little tiny parts of her life, and in the matter of paragraphs, months just fly by. And I love how we just skip through time. You never know when reading these books. Sometimes it's almost like all of a sudden, boom, a year just goes by. It's crazy, and I love it. So we meet Anne and Diana on their way to school. Anne is, of course, remarking about how it is such a beautiful day that she pities anybody that is not alive to enjoy that day right there that they are having. Never will there be to her another day that could possibly measure up to this. And then she even says to Diana, can you even imagine a more beautiful way to go to school?
and Diana admits no, because the other way to go to school is by the main road where they would get all dusty. Diana was very distracted as she was looking into her basket to make sure she had enough of whatever she had to share. Now, at Avonlea schools, it was absolutely crucial that every single girl shares with every other single little girl. If something was kept for only herself or her and her best friend, they would forever be branded forever and ever branded as awful mean. This means that by the time you actually get a bit of whatever you have, you only get enough to tantalize you, which to me doesn't sound that great. Sounds very exhausting and very much like school playground stuff. Anne does in fact decide that the walk is so beautiful that imagination could not, in fact, perfect on it. Even the narrator admits in her own aside that it was a pretty one. The road where Diana and Anne would meet, where their farms met, she called that road Lover's Lane. We get a really beautiful description of the walk in the book, naming the places like Lover's Lane, Willowmere, Violet Vale, and Birch Path, all named by Anne with her own romantic little names. Oh my god, is that thing trying to go after my chickens? Hell no. Hell no.
Alright, we changed the light. We're gonna try to power through and finish. It's still pretty noisy outside, but I can always refilm these if I really need to. Okay, so after the whole Willowmere, Violet Vale, Birch Path part. From the text, the Avonlea School was a whitewashed building, low in the eaves and wide in the windows, furnished inside with comfortable, sustainable, old-fashioned desks that opened and shut and were carved all over their lids with initials and hieroglyphics of 3 generations of school children. The schoolhouse was set back from the road, and behind it was a dusky fir wood and a brook where all the children put their bottles of milk in the morning to keep it cool and sweet until dinner hour. Which I think is just such a little idyllic photo. Marilla was really nervous about Anne's first day of school. Marilla was really worried about Anne's first day of school. I mean, with her being so odd and whatnot, she was afraid the other children would not like her. But she really had no reason to worry at all. In fact, Anne was quite popular amongst her peers. She came home from the first day of school in very high spirits. She announces she thinks she is going to like going to school here, although she's not a fan at all of the master, or the teacher. Quote, "He's all the time curling his mustache and making eyes at Prissy Andrews. Prissy is grown up, you know. She's 16 and she's studying for the Queen's I'm going to use the book for this one because I don't know why I'm struggling to read. I have a headache. He's all the time curling his mustache and making eyes at Prissy Andrews. Prissy is grown up, you know. She's 16, and she's studying for the entrance examination into the Queen's Academy at Charlottetown next year. Tilly Boulder says the master is dead gone on her. She's got a beautiful complexion and curly brown hair, and she does it up so elegantly. She sits in the long seat at the back, and he sits there too, most of the time, to explain her lessons, he says. But Ruby Gillis says she saw him writing something on her slate, and when Prissy read it, she blushed red as beets and giggled. And Ruby Gillis says she doesn't believe it had anything to do with the lesson. Yeah, 16 is a full-grown adult, which is alarming. I know history, they didn't really care about girls and their development, but it's quite alarming. 16 is an adult. The theme of older men preying on younger women is something that happens in Emily as well, and when we get there, I really want to take a chance to just kind of look at the two and see if we see any kind of similarities, because I know that for me, it kind of feels like the author might have had her own experiences with a gentleman, or not a gentleman. She might have had her own experiences with someone preying on her, and I can't tell. Like, when I read Emily, we'll get there, but there's something in that I still don't know how I feel, what she was trying to convey as her message. But we'll see. But that is definitely something that with, like, historical text creeps me out. And there are some where it's just... Marilla says that she better not hear Anne talking about her teacher that way again, because it's her job to learn from her teacher. And she really hopes that Anne is going to be a good girl. Anne ensures that she was a good girl and tells Marilla all about her day. I was given feedback by somebody who watched my first video that they said to read more of the text when I'm doing this, so I'm going to do that. Let me know below if it's something you like, something you want less, something you want more. It's already good. We'll see. I think, too, Anne has already gone through so much that this really nice first day of school deserves to be, like, really told. So when she, is responding to Marilla saying, "I hope you were a good girl." "Indeed I was," said Anne comfortably. "It wasn't so hard as you might imagine either. I sat with Diana. Our seat is right by the window, and we can look down to the lake of shining water. waters. There's a lot of nice girls in school, and we have scrumptious fun playing at dinner time. It's so nice to have a lot of little girls to play with. But of course, I like Diana best and always will. I adore Diana. I'm dreadfully far behind the others. They're all in the 5th book, and I'm only in the 4th. I feel that it's kind of a disgrace, but there's not one of them that has such imaginations as I have, as I soon found out. We had reading and geography and Canadian history and dictation today. Mr. Phelps said my spelling was disgraceful, and he held up my slate so everybody could see it, and marked all over it. I felt so mortified, Marilla. He might have been politer to a stranger, I'd think. Ruby Gillis gave me an apple, and Sophia Sloane lent me a lovely pink card with "May I see you home" on it. I'm to give it back to her tomorrow. And Tilly Boulder let me wear her bead ring all afternoon. Can I have some of those pearl beads off the old pincushion in the garret to make myself a ring? And oh, Marilla, Jane Andrews told me that Minnie McFasterson told her that she heard that Prissy Andrews tell Sarah Gillis that I had a very pretty nose. Marilla, that is the first compliment I have ever had in my life. You can't imagine what a strange feeling it gave me. Marilla, have I really a pretty nose? I know you'd tell me the truth. Your nose is well enough, says Marilla shortly. Secretly, she thought Anne's nose was a remarkable pretty one, but she had no intention of telling her so. It's so sweet to hear about Anne's first day. I mean, I don't like the teacher. I agree with her. But it's so sweet to hear that the girls are already excited to meet her and nobody is kind of being against her for who she is. She's just loved. And I love seeing all the little names of the friends and everything, some of them that were on the little shows and some of them that aren't. But I just love to hear all their names because each chapter, each book, you know, it's its own part of the series and you kind of learn to like love the old days and think back to them when you're reading the older books, and this literally becomes the old days. I'm gonna go check on that chicken.
All right. Sorry. I just had to go check to make sure that our chicken was okay. I heard it making a lot of noise, but everyone's good. I'm a little out of breath, but everyone's good. The way that Anne talks about her first day really does bring back memories of me when I was a kid at school. How, like, kindergarten felt. Like, how everyone's just having such a good time and everything moves along and you're just loving it. Everything is new and exciting. Marilla secretly thinking that Anne really does have a cute little nose. Diana, I love Anne reassuring us she will always love Diana most. And Mr. Phillips is absolutely not helping his case with Anne, or frankly, never helps his case with me. I just never like him. And just like that, we find out that actually the present is 3 weeks after the first day of school. So when they are on their walk, it's been 3 weeks since it's all started out. And oh boy, this 3-week jump is very important because this is the first day that we meet one of Avonlea students that has not been around, a young boy by the name of Gilbert Blythe. I am feeling quite tired but like wanting to film, so I'm not sure I'll have the same spunk that I usually have, but I want to just put a warning that if you are looking for a Gilbert stan page, this is not it. Not as much with younger Gilbert, but more older Gilbert. I have a lot of commentary on him. I just wanted to give that little warning. I'm not a stan. I am not a stan of Gilbert Blythe. Sorry. If you are, have you done anything but watch the movies? That's my question. Really loud owl out there. Going on today. 2 owls hooting to each other. This is another time, too, to remind you that I have not really looked up to see what the common theories, the common opinions are. So me tearing apart Gilbert a little bit might be very common in the commentary industry. I'm not saying anything I'm coming up with is unique. I'm just saying I'm trying to come up with, just give you my organic feelings. Yeah, younger Gilbert I'll be a little gentler on because he's a child, but older Gilbert. So Diana is actually the first one to speak about and introduce us to Gilbert, saying, "He's awfully handsome, man, and he teases the girls something terrible. He just torments our lives out." Diana's voice indicated that she rather liked having her life tormented out than not. "Gilbert Blythe," says Anne. "Isn't he the name that's written up on that porch wall with Julia Bell with a big 'take notice' over them?" "Yes," says Diana, tossing her head. "But I'm sure he doesn't like Julia Bell so very much. I've heard him say he studied the multiplication tables by her freckles." Oh, ooh, yeah, no, let's not, talk about how he makes fun of girls with freckles to Anne. That's gonna be a point against him, and sure enough. "Oh, don't speak about freckles to me," implored Anne. "It isn't delicate when I've got so many. But I do think that writing 'take notices' up on the wall about boys and girls is the silliest ever. I should just like to see anybody dare to write my name up with the boys. Not, of course," she hastens to add, "that anybody would." My neck is stiff. That hurt. From our first introduction of Gilbert, we're kind of warned that this kid's gonna piss her off. Known to tease, we know that Anne hates being teased. Teased about freckles, which would really make Anne very angry. And I mean, considering she ends this whole entire statement putting herself down, saying that not that anyone put her name up, Anne is not somebody that's going to allow someone so simple as Gilbert Blythe to insult her. Okay, hold on. I had to take this off my phone. I keep looking at it. Diana tells Anne that is nonsense, and Diana herself, it is said, had black eyes and glossy hair, had played such a havoc with the hearts of Avonlea schoolboys. Yeah, probably also boys that are a little older than her 11 years, but we move on. She insists that it's just a joke to put someone's name up. Besides, she'd already heard that Charlie Sloane was dead gone already on Anne. He told his mother, mind you, that you were the smartest girl in the school. That's better than being good looking. That's better than being good looking. No, it isn't, said Anne, feminine to the core. I'd rather be pretty than clever. And I hate Charlie Sloane. I can't bear a boy with goggle eyes. If anybody wrote my name up with his, I would never get over it, Diana Barry. But it is nice to keep head of your class. My glitter's all over my face right now. It's because I just have a headache and I keep putting my hands in my face, but I wanna get through this chapter. It's a long one, but I want to get through it. Of course, as we know, Anne is not one to really take a compliment. And I mean, in my best case scenarios, I struggle with taking a compliment as well. I kind of have to do some mental work to be like, just say thank you. I've done a lot of journaling recently, and fun fact, a lot of things go back to just not feeling good enough. And if you can find ways to make yourself feel better about yourself, you can actually start to heal other things. But again, too much about me, I digress. Diana lets Anne know that Gilbert is usually the head of the class. Even though he is 14 years old, he's actually in the level 4. He's actually in the level 4 with Anne. That's because for 3 years, Gilbert went with his father when he was really sick to Alberta to take care of him, and he didn't go to school there until they came back, so he's kind of just been catching up. Diana warns that it won't so easy to be the head of class now that he's back. It's even more set up for Anne to not like this boy. She's on her defense before she's even met him yet. She, of course, rises to the challenge to not only be the smartest of the 9 and 10-year-olds, but to be even smarter than someone older than her. So she said that Josie Pye was head yesterday. Anne spelled the word abolition. We're gonna put that right here. And noticed Josie peeking inside of her book. Mr. Phillips was, of course, distracted because of Prissy. Anne gave her a dirty look. Which made her read the words wrong anyways, because she was so red with embarrassment. Diana tells her that all the Pye girls are cheaters. Gertie put her milk, in fact, in the same spot as Diana the day before, and the insult is so huge that she declares she just doesn't speak to her anymore. I remember I helped out with a dance class for kindergarteners, and the level of fights and grudges with young girls, I'm gonna be real with you, is quite scary. How quickly you can go from being friends to not. The rate at which kids come and go with friendships leaves my head spinning, frankly. When they get into the class, Diana points out Gilbert to Anne, challenging her to not see him as handsome. She sees that Gilbert Blythe was absorbed in stealthily pinning the long yellow braid of Ruby Gillis, who sat in front of him, to the back of her seat. He was a tall boy with curly brown hair, roguish hazel eyes, and a mouth twisted into a teasing smile. Presently, Ruby Gillis started up to take a sum to the master. She fell back into her seat with a little shriek, believing that her hair was pulled out by the roots. Everybody looked at her, and Mr. Phillips glared so sternly that Ruby began crying. Gilbert had whisked the pin out of sight and was studying his history with the soberest face in the world, but when this commotion subsided, he looked over at Anne and winked in inexplicable drowly. And I think your Gilbert Blythe is handsome, confided Anne to Diana, but I think he's very bold, and it isn't good manners to wink at a stranger girl. And poor Ruby, too. I hope she didn't get in too much trouble. It's never mentioned. And I agree with Anne. Handsome is only one proponent of what makes somebody a good partner. So now we're brought to that afternoon when we're told things pick up a little bit. Of course, Mr. Phillips wasn't paying attention, talking to Prissy, like every other school day. The rest of the class was literally doing all that they wanted to do, whatever they wanted to do, and he wasn't paying attention, which makes me kind of one of those things where it's like, yes, ultimately the author is against these behaviors, I feel like, these creepy older men. It's just, we'll get to Emily and we'll discuss then why I have certain feelings on certain certain things that I'm not sure of. And by the way, if you haven't watched my other video again, it is linked below. I highly recommend you go in there at least to see not only the first parts of this book, but also to get my explanation on why I say the author versus the actual name of the writer of this story. We even get a little description that I love of how the children are exactly spending their time. Eating green apples, whispering, drawing, and driving crickets harnessed to strings up and down the aisles. The crickets made me laugh especially. I mean, and how little this teacher cares that these kids have crickets on strings going and they're racing them, and he just doesn't even catch any of it. He's just so interested in swooning that pretty little teenage girl. Of course, Gilbert is focusing right in on Anne, trying to get her to look at him without success. She was, unknowing to him, stuck in kind of a dissociation imagination session that had her mind fixated on the Lake of Shining Waters across the way, and in all her imaginings and musings there. Gilbert's a little player, and he's used to all the little girls just fawning all over him, let's be real. He usually looks at them and they're, but not Anne. Not Anne. She should look at him, that redhead Shirley girl with the little pointed chin and the big eyes that weren't like any other eyes of any other Avonlea schoolgirl. The big eyes that weren't like the eyes of any other girl in Avonlea school. He wants those eyes on him, and it's so frustrating that he can't get them. He can get any girl, but not her. This is, I don't know if I realized before that he was 14, really, but this is the first time that it's really cementing in my head that Gilbert is 14 versus 11 here. And then I'm also reminded about how boys were just raised differently. Look at Prissy, she's a full entire adult, while Gilbert's not seen as like so much older than Anne. In fact, they're the same level in school, so therefore they are even, kind of, you know what I mean? To me, kind of makes it even more a little ridiculous how his teasing. I mean, he'll do anything to get Anne's attention, including Gilbert reached across the aisle, picked up the end of Anne's long red braid, held it out at arm's length, and said in a piercing whisper, "Carrots! Carrots!" Then Anne looked at him with a vengeance. She did more than look. She sprang to her feet, her bright fancies fallen in curless ruin. She flashed one indignant glance at Gilbert from eyes whose angry sparkle was swiftly quenched in equally angry tears. "You mean, hateful boy," she explains passionately. "How dare you?" And then thwack! Anne had brought her slate right down on Gilbert's head and cracked it. Slate, not head. Clear across. Avonlea School always enjoyed a scene. This was especially an enjoyable one. Everyone said, "Oh," in horrified delight. Diana gasped. Ruby Gillis, who was inclined to hysteria, began to cry. Tommy Sloane let his team of crickets escape altogether while he stared open-mouthed at the tableau. Mr. Phillips stalked down the aisle and laid his heavy hand on Anne's shoulder. Of course. And is there a worse way that Gilbert could have gotten her attention? He could have, afterwards said something to her. No, he's got to tease her. Not only call her carrots, but then, of course, she has a reaction, which is natural, and now she's going to be the one to get in trouble, sure. And, frankly, I get Anne not wanting to be teased. Like I've said before, I'm not somebody who really does well with being teased. Now I am getting better at it, but it's got to be from only certain people. And I also, have to remind myself, too, that Gilbert was gone for 3 years, so even though he is 14, he took care of his father for 3 years. So maturity-wise and everything, I'll let it go. So, of course, Mr. Creeperville, coming out of his creeper state, comes over and asks Anne, whatever does this mean? Gilbert, to his credit, does try to speak up for her, stating that he was teasing her and that it was nothing. Mr. Phillips sternly states, "I am sorry to see a pupil of mine displaying such a temper and such a vindictive spirit," he says in a solemn tone, as if the mere fact of being a pupil of his ought to root out all evil passions from the hearts of small, imperfect mortals. Talk about invalidating this f***ing man. He decides now's the moment to be a teacher. Now when the incidents that only occurred because he wasn't paying attention to his class occurred. Not the crickets. No, the crickets don't get him, but Anne defending herself, that gets him. He makes Anne go stand underneath her name on the blackboard, and Anne would much rather have been preferred to have been whipped during this situation than to have to deal with this humiliation. And right above her head it says, "Anne Shirley has a very bad temper. Anne Shirley must learn to control her temper," and then read it out loud so that even the premier class, who couldn't read writing, should understand it. This man. This drives me crazy. I am just so triggered by the invalidation even reading the script back. this time. Every time I hear this story, it's just, really, dude? Anne stands tall the rest of the day, refusing to bow her head or cry underneath that darn blackboard. She looks at a few of her classmates, including Diana, with resentful eyes, but refuses to look at Gilbert. She won't give him the satisfaction. In fact, she declared that she would never look at him or speak to him again. When school is dismissed, Anne walks out with her head held high and ignoring Gilbert as he tries to intervene at the porch door. He really does try to apologize, and Anne just acts like he wasn't there. Diana says, "Oh, how could you?" half reproachfully, half admiringly. She says that she would not have been able to resist Gilbert. Anne says that she will never forgive him, and that Mr. Phillips spelled her name without an E. And yeah, reading that earlier, I didn't even notice that he put an Anne without an E, which is even a bigger disgrace. Madam. Diane really does try to reassure Anne that he has done this to all the girls and has never tried to apologize once. And to be fair, have any of them broke their slate over his head? Because I also have a feeling that that's probably a first too. And yeah, cringe face aloud. Because for me, it's like, oh, wow. Congratulations, Gilbert. Anne says no, the slight against her was just too bad to be forgiven. And you know what, Anne? I stand with you, girl. I validate you. Maybe not quite to the level that is, in fact, if I was in real life with Anne, but this is just a case of her stubbornness. You can't take back the past, and had this whole event never occurred, Anne probably would have gotten over her distaste for Gilbert from the description that Diana gave her. We are here informed that during the noon break hour, some of the kids like to go and pick gum in Mr. Bell's spruce groves. When they would see Mr. Phillips going back to the school, they would run as fast as they could and would usually arrive breathless and late. The day after the whole incident with Gilbert, Mr. Phillips announces all those who were not in their seats when he returned would be punished. And of course, all the boys and girls go to the grove as usual, and fully intended to return on time. They wanted to stay only long enough to, pick a chew, but as usual, time gets away from them. I mean, frankly, the only thing that brings them to the fact that, a lot of time has passed, Jimmy Glover announcing, "Master's coming!" from the top of the largest spruce. This is a long chapter. The girls were on the ground and sprinted off and were the first ones to make it to the building. The boys get down right after them out of the trees, which takes a few more moments. As Anne was off on her own, it takes her even an extra second to realize what's going on, but she's fast like a deer, so she manages to overtake the boys, wreath of rice lilies in her hair. She even overtakes them enough to make it to her seat before they even get there. So, not the last either. And Mr. Phillips can't bother to actually punish all those kids, so instead he, picks out one of the boys, right? No. He picks out Anne as his little target. She, who had dropped into her seat, gasping for breath with a forgotten lily wreath hanging askew over one ear and giving her a particularly rakish and disheveled appearance. "Anne Shirley, since you seem to be so fond of the boys' company, we shall indulge you in your taste for it this afternoon," he said sarcastically. "Take those flowers out of your hair and sit with Gilbert Blythe." Ouch. Of all the boys, he picks Gilbert because he knows what that is going to do to her. First, I get, okay, she's disheveled. She probably looks the craziest out of all the kids. If you didn't know and you were told to guess which one just ran, probably looks like her the most, okay? Granted, I will give you that. But this, weirdly, abhorrently cruel and just gross. Boys versus girls, we can sit next to each other, so bad. Diana takes the wreath from Anne's hair as the boys are snickering, and she has still not responded. So Diana gives her hand a squeeze, has no response, and Mr. Phillips asks if she has heard him. "Yes, sir, but I didn't suppose you really meant it," Anne said slowly. He used a sarcastic tone which all of the kids hated and said, "I assure you I did. Obey me at once." For a second, it does kind of look like Anne is pondering disobeying, but she kind of gives in and sits next to Gilbert and hides her face. Ruby Gillis is the only one in the room that actually gets a little bit of a glimpse of Anne's face and says, "Actually never seen anything like it. It was so white with awful little red spots on it." Having to sit next to a boy, much less Gilbert, was the end of everything for Anne. The other kids continue to giggle and nudge each other, but kind of give up really fast when they realize Anne's head is just not returning back to the surface. Gilbert works on his fractions and does his very best to seem absorbed in his work as if he doesn't even notice Anne very uncomfortable next to him, which, to his credit, is a good move. Anne was supposed to go outside with everyone else for history class, and she doesn't, and Mr. Phillips is too involved in trying to get the next line of his poem to Priscilla right that he doesn't even notice she stays behind. When Gilbert gets up, he took from his desk a little pink candy heart with a gold motto on it, "You are sweet," and slipped it under the curve of Anne's arm, whereupon Anne arose, took the pink heart gingerly between the tips of her fingers, dropped it on the floor, ground it to a powder beneath her heel, and resumed her position without resigning to bestow a glance on Gilbert. And Anne is nothing if not set in her mind, and I really do kind of feel bad for Gilbert here, a little bit more in the future. He really tries, but Anne is stubborn. Anne is set to her ways. Anne takes all of her school supplies out of her desk, and on the way home, Diana asks her why she did that, and she informs Diana that she will not be returning back to school. She's going to have her materials at home, she's going to study, and that is that. She said she's not going to school with that man again. Well, I don't really know if she means Mr. Phillips or Gilbert. I know she means Mr. Phillips, but also Gilbert. Probably same. "Oh, Anne!" Diana looked as if she was going to cry. "I do think you're mean. What shall I do? Mr. Phillips will make me sit with that horrid Gertie Pye. I know he will, because she's sitting alone. Do come back, Anne. I'd do almost anything in the world for you, Diana," said Anne sadly. "I'd let myself be torn limb from limb if it would do you any good. But I can't do this, so please don't ask it. You'll hollow up my soul." I mean, that's actually really dramatic, yes, but also Anne has her boundaries. She has her firm lines that she will not cross for the betterment of her own mental health. Diana continues to share more and more fun things that Anne will miss, trying to get her to come back to school, but it's not going to work. And when Marilla finds out about Anne's plan, at first, as expected, her answer is nonsense. You're going to school. But looked at Anne and, quote, saw something remarkable like unyielding stubbornness look out of Anne's small face. She understood that she would have trouble overcoming it, but she resolved wisely to say nothing more just then. She decides that evening she'll go and talk to Rachel about it, admitting there's no use reasoning with Anne. She's too worked up, and I've an idea that she can be awful stubborn if she takes the notion. Far as I can move out from her story, Mr. Phillips has been carrying with matters with a rather high hand, but it would never do to say so to her. I'll just talk it over with Rachel. She's sent 10 children to school and ought to know something about it. She'll have heard the whole story too by this time. I appreciate Marilla here for not pushing Anne into school and in fact thinking, okay, let me go figure out what the proper solution is, which was absolutely the right move. Not gonna lie, the way that the ebook was at this point, I thought that I had reached the end of the text and I was about ready to round it all out, turn the page, and there was more. It's just a long chapter. Marilla finds Mrs. Rachel Lynde knitting cheerfully as usual when she gets to her house. Marilla was correct in assuming that Rachel already knew the story, and just asks Rachel what her opinion is. "Well, since you've asked my advice, Marilla," says Mrs. Lynde amiably. Mrs. Lynde dearly loved to be asked for advice. "I'd just humor her a little at first, but that's what I'd do. It's my belief that Mr. Phillips was in the wrong. Of course, it doesn't do to say so to the children, you know." I love that, how they're always just like, we can't tell the kids they're right. Nope, giving them proper clarity, understanding, that's not a good idea. She admits that yes, yesterday there was need to punish Anne, but certainly not today. If Anne was going to be punished, so should have the other children. It didn't make sense for only Anne. She says that making girls sit with boys is absolutely not modest, and I don't know how many rumors she has heard, but I don't think there is anything modest about that man. She admits that she also is surprised at how popular Anne is, and that all of the classmates agreed they all should have been punished, not just Anne. So Marilla, shocking herself, confirms that yeah, Anne can stay home. And Rachel points out, has to come from her mouth, that she wants to go back, and besides, it'll blow over in a week or two. Making her go back this early will only bring on a tantrum, and I think both those ladies know an Anne tantrum already. She admits that Mr. Phillips isn't a great teacher, and it's not like Anne would be really missing much anyways. Rachel, in fact, does hint, saying that she knows that he neglects the younger students for his Queen's participants. And we get a little bit of tea that the only reason he's a teacher there, his uncle is like the trustee. She says she doesn't even know what's going on with education on that island anymore, and of course he's a Nepo baby. Yeah, it all rings like Nepo baby. So Marilla doesn't try to force Anne to go to school. Quote, she learns her lessons at home, did her chores, and played with Diana in the chilly purple autumn twilight. If she met Gilbert on the road or in Sunday school, she passed him with an icy contempt that he couldn't have thawed no matter how hard he would have tried. Her hatred for Gilbert is only matched by her love for Diana. Marilla has to ask Anne what is wrong. She comes back sobbing from playing. And this is one of those top moments of listening to this and going, oh my god, Anne, I feel you. It's about Diana, sobbed Anne luxuriously. I love Diana so much, Marilla. I can't even live without her. But I know very well when we grow up that Diana will get married and go away and leave me. And oh, what shall I do? I hate her husband. I just hate him furiously. I've been imagining it all out, the wedding and everything. Diana dressed in snowy garments with a veil and looking as beautiful and as regal as a queen, and me, the bridesmaid, with a lovely dress too, and puffed sleeves, but with a breaking heart beneath my smiling face. And then bidding Diana goodbye. And Mrs. Brand breaks down crying and weeps with increasing bitterness, absolutely spiraling. Marilla turns her face to try to hide the fact that she's giggling, but it was no use. She just collapsed into the nearest chair and just starts absolutely laughing in such a hearty and unusual laughter that Matthew, who is across the yard outside, completely halts in amazement. He had no idea when he'd even heard Marilla laugh like that before. Well, Anne Shirley, says Marilla as soon as she could speak, if you must borrow trouble, for pity's sake, borrow it handier home. I should think you had an imagination, sure enough. I cried so many times over the inevitable my friends and I would no longer be talking and having school. I sat there in my school days fully aware of how temporary this time was, and I feel Anne so hard there, and that was one of those first moments that I was like, I feel that way too. I think about my friend Christina growing up and how sad it was for me when she moved away, and how now I'm glad I have that bond. It's one of my closest people in my life. Even if we don't speak every day, we don't have to. When we're visiting, it's incredible. Some of that is definitely rooted in insecurity and feeling like I'm not good enough. Again, everything leads back to that. I mean, I was the kid who cried because I turned 10 and I wouldn't be single digits ever again. And one of the only friends that remembers that is Christina, because she was there. It was a time. And I just turned 30. And if you want to talk about cosmic just happenings and crap, I will probably make a video about everything around my 30th, because it was on a level that I can't even discuss or speak how just transformative and rebirthing that whole thing was. But that's for a future day if you actually care about it. But finally, that is the end of chapter 15. I'm not hoping, but I think that's the longest chapter. I really don't know until we hit it, but that was a long one.